2011 Conservation Commission meeting. First order of business is concerning an abbreviated notice of resource area delineation filed by the community of Khmer Buddhist monks. Project location 104 Townsend Ave, 800.1 and 810 Varnum Ave. This is a continuation from our last meeting. We were continuing in order that a peer review might be started on the parcel, and a letter has gone out to the proponents telling them that a consulting firm has been selected. Is there anyone here representing the community of Buddhist monks? Craig, would you like to speak about this?
Very briefly, at the last meeting, we discussed the most appropriate way to move forward with the third-party peer review required by the commission. At the time, it was decided that as administrator, I could select a consultant and try and get them on board as quickly as possible to complete a review of the delineation while vegetation was still visible to help with the delineation. We're still awaiting the decision by the applicant as to how to proceed. They do have the right to appeal or reject the consultant. They can appeal it for qualifications or for conflict of interest, but not the commission's decision to require one in general. And if they choose to withdraw their application or to move forward without the peer review, then it would be the commission's course of action likely to decide that there's not enough information. Now, again, those are the options. They've made it very clear that they are proceeding with this as requested and required by the city for work completed at the site. So I expect to receive word from them tomorrow or Monday. And once I get the actual deposit for the funds, then I will engage the independent consultant who was selected from Newburyport.
And how soon could this firm be out there?
One of the decision criteria I used in selecting the firm was how quickly they indicated they were able to start. And this firm indicated it could start within the week of the notice to proceed. So if I were to engage the firm on next Monday, by Friday they would be on site, having done at least one walkthrough to begin the process.
And how long would the delineation take, do you think?
They indicated that the scope of work outlined in the request for bids that I sent, which was the scope that we discussed here of reviewing the flags, reviewing additional areas that were not originally indicated, including the northeast corner and parcel 2, would take approximately 1 week. So the hope then is if I can move forward with the notice to proceed next Monday, then that would be an adequate timetable to get a full report by the next meeting in November for the commission.
So at this point, I would entertain a motion to continue until our next meeting, which would be November 23rd.
Yes, 23rd.
I'll make a motion to continue to our next meeting, November 23rd.
Second by Bob. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. At this time, I'd entertain a motion to take an item out of order. This is actually concerning the same project, and it's at the end of our agenda. It's the last item on our agenda, and it concerns an enforcement order that was issued on this property. Could I have a motion to take that item out of order and take it next on the agenda?
I'll move to take the enforcement order out of order.
Seconded by Mr. Moore. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So now we'll consider the enforcement order given to the community of Khmer Buddhist monks. It concerns a violation of alterations without a permit in bordering land subject to flooding, floodplain, and bordering vegetated wetlands. The enforcement order was also issued to the property owner, Richard Boyle of Tingsboro, Mass. And it states that several hundred yards of clearing without a permit in bordering lands subject to flooding and some work without a permit in bordering vegetated wetlands have been done. The proponent or property owner is asked to complete a notice of intent by November 30th, 2011, and also to cease and desist the activity that is in violation. Mr. Thomas, do you have something to add to that as far as what exactly occurred?
I can provide a little bit more background. As we know, this is a situation, there was work conducted in resource areas, principally the floodplain, but potentially as well in some wetlands either bordering or isolated on the site. This has been well established and is the reason for the ANRAD that we considered before these enforcement orders. The enforcement order has always been an option for the commission, but we felt it was better to proceed informally while the groups involved, the property owner and the current applicant, were proceeding with the appropriate conservation permitting and had ceased activity. Unfortunately, there was a request to review an additional portion of the site from concerned abutters and neighbors. Upon inspection, I found a small but significant amount of additional clearing that caused me to determine the enforcement order would be an appropriate step to very formally and clearly indicate that no more work can occur on the site, and to give a specific timeline for the submission of the notice of intent for remediation and mitigation of the work that has been conducted.
Thank you. At this point, I believe we should ratify the enforcement order. If I could add a motion to that effect.
I move to ratify the enforcement order.
Moved by Mr. Mellon. Second,
Second.
Ms. Lynch. Discussion?
I just have a question before we move on. This clearing that you noticed was done between the last meeting that the applicant attended and this meeting? So after they came before us the first time?
No, I believe the clearing was occurred prior to that meeting, but subsequent to the initial series of letters that I think are probably well-known at this point, stating the violation situations on the property. It occurred some weeks ago, it appears, when those who were living on the site and the city indicated through because of building and health concerns that there couldn't be a full-time occupation of the site. They moved to an adjacent building. At that point, it appears that there was a path cut back, again, to link up with the other areas. So subsequent to the initial letters, again, stating no clearing could occur, but prior to our last meeting.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? I believe there are some concerned citizens here that would like an opportunity to speak. If I could just have the vote first on that motion to ratify the enforcement order. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. We can open it up to the public if you have new information that hasn't been submitted in prior meetings. And I would ask that you identify yourself. Is there someone who would like to speak?
My name is John Hamblett, 495 Varnum Avenue. I'm on the board and represent the Pawtucketville Citizens Council. Tonight there are 3 abutters to the properties that are under discussion, and I believe one of the abutters wants to comment about ongoing clearing as recent as the last few days. So we would like to address that if it's appropriate.
All right. Is there someone who'd like to speak? Please identify yourself.
Yeah, Deb Forgione, 97 Townsend Avenue. I'm waiting for Mrs. Karzminski, who lives on Barnum Avenue. She's coming with her daughter. She's 80. She's really trying to come, and she's not here yet. I think she thought we were at the end of the agenda, but she's on Barnum Ave. So when you look at that parcel, she called me to tell me that she hears them cutting in the back of her property. They've gone from one end to the other, and they're in the back of her area, and she can hear them. But she's not here to say that. But the people that live on Townsend Avenue, I'm not quite sure of the timeline of the cutting of the trees, but it doesn't stop. You can clearly hear them in the woods. There's cutting going on, and we have one other neighbor who went and checked out on the site, and he says they've done more clearing and there's more tarps. So that's what I wanted to say.
What's the time frame for this clearing?
I think that would be the other abutter. Hold on, please. Do you want to talk about what you saw in the back with the cutting of the trees, the tops?
Hi, Richard Clark, 128 Townsend Ave. Yeah, I was over there about a week ago, and you could see that they've clearly been cutting down more trees. Actually, this weekend, I actually heard, I'm not sure if it was a chainsaw or it wasn't quite that loud, but you could hear some kind of cutting device. And they've been hammering over there constantly. That's all you hear is pounding the nails, and I'm not sure what they're doing over there. I haven't been over there in a couple of days. So that's about it.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Clark. Could we have your address, please?
Sorry. I'm sorry?
Is that what you want? Could you state your address, please?
128 Townsend Ave. I'm right on where they're looking to put the street about 20 feet from one of my windows. And that property actually is underwater every year. Has anybody come down the street to see if, when it's raining, to see who's actually flooding? I flood every time it rains. I have water, a couple of inches in my garage every time it rains. Like tomorrow, if you came by, you'll see quite a bit of water in my yard.
I think we're well aware of the problems of Townsend Avenue on this board.
Okay. I wasn't sure.
This enforcement order is dated November 3rd, so it does state that they must cease and desist from all activities of clearing on the property. And therefore, if you should hear any clearing, or if anything that appears to be clearing, or that should maybe be called into Mr. Thomas at the Conservation.
Has anybody checked to see what kind of wildlife is in there, and if there's any endangered species or anything that's going on in there?
We're going to be having a peer review, a second review of the site as far as the wetlands. We haven't gotten as far as cataloging the wildlife on the site.
Okay, and they have tops all over the place. They're covering all kinds of things. And no offense to anybody, but it looks like Cambodia when you walk in there. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Okay, we have ratified the enforcement order, and is there anyone else who has a comment on this particular project? If not, we'll be moving on our agenda.
Madam Chairman, I just got a quick question for Mr. Thomas for clarification. With regard to any work, the enforcement order, what's the jurisdiction of that? I mean, if they were doing work on the property outside of the resource area, is that being prohibited as well?
No, work on the property outside of resource areas would not be covered under the enforcement order. However, per the site plan submitted for the ANRAD, there's a very small sliver of land along Varnum Avenue to the north of Clay Pit Brook that appears to be both outside of the wetland area, slightly beyond the buffer zone, and at a higher elevation than the floodplain. But with that small exception, the entire parcel, based on preliminary elevations and known resource areas, is within either the floodplain or a wetland of some sort. I will, to say, I will investigate potential additional clearing, but one item that we will hear, that you will notice in the coming days likely, is a wood chipper. It's been requested from both the building commissioner and the fire department because of fire concerns, that the material that was originally cleared be taken out by hand and chipped on the adjacent property that is above the floodplain, also known as the Demoulas lot.
Do we have any communication as to when a notice of intent might be forthcoming on this project?
No, and this is part of the goal, the enforcement orders, to give a clear timeline as to the required steps to bring the site into compliance. Based on our timeline of the projected peer review completion and meeting dates, November 30th would be a date after our next meeting, at which we will hopefully have peer review information for the ANRAD, and would seemingly be an appropriate date to both move forward the project in an expeditious way to seek compliance, but also to wait for the appropriate review of the current submissions. But they haven't indicated anything specific other than a general agreement to submit a notice of intent.
Thank you. So this is continued until our next meeting.
Could I just take a moment to ask a question? We've been pretty, we've had a lot of good communication with the city about what's going on, like when we have a complaint or what's going on, and we email back and forth. So we have had very good dialogue. The only thing I'm a little bit disappointed in is that we've been hearing all this noise, and then we find out that there was an allowable wood chipper, and we've been emailing the city telling them what's been going on, and I wish that that had come our way, that we would have known that, because for a week we've been hearing so much noise, like cutting, and only to find out tonight it was an allowable wood chipper. Then I think that would have been helpful. How could we have gotten that information?
I apologize that was not clearly communicated, but a week is actually a longer time period than this discussion about wood chipping activities. And the description of the proximity to the homes would indicate it's either not being used in the way that we required, or that it's additional work. And so that I will investigate, but I apologize that it wasn't clearly communicated that we had asked for this one piece of equipment on the adjacent property.
Yeah, so I guess getting that communication would be so helpful, so we didn't come here and think that we're, telling you something that you weren't, aware of, so it doesn't look like we're picking at them all the time. It feels that way sometimes, that if I had known it was the wood chipper, then we would have been, okay, well, it's a wood chipper, instead of coming here thinking we're telling you something you don't know. So knowing, could we know that? Could you email us? Okay, so if we know about the wood chipper, that's great. So now we know what that constant humming is. So when you said that they're in there doing the wood chipping, is anybody going in there and maybe observing what they're cutting to make sure it's just the brush and not keep... If Mrs. Karminski says it's behind her house, which is on Varnum Avenue, that seems that wasn't the original area that was disturbed. So those are just my concerns and questions, and thank you.
I think when you chip wood, you have to saw it up into smaller pieces, so it's very likely you would hear chainsaws as well.
But the description, it's important to receive the descriptions of this work, because it doesn't fully comport with our agreement with the Temple Group as to how this work would be done. So I appreciate these concerns being brought in. I will look into this either tomorrow or early next week.
Thank you.
Could I just ask for clarification? Craig, they've set up a wood chipper off-site, and they're dragging wood off-site? What was the description again of the activity, if I may?
I actually drove by yesterday and didn't see what I expected to see for wood chipper on site. That's why I truly appreciate, and I'm sure the commission does, the feedback and the continued oversight of the activity on the site. The agreement that we came to was that all the material that was cleared on site, if for those who have been there, was piled next to the path.
Right.
It was piled in such a way that the concern was starting to rise that were it to be left over the winter and then dry out again in the spring, it could be a fire hazard. So we were,
Okay, I didn't hear that.
Yeah, so
there
we
was
were-
fire concern.
yeah, so both from the building commissioner and the fire department. So what we requested is because, again, the use of a large machine like a wood chipper and the placement of an enormous pile of wood chips would also not be allowable in the floodplain. We came to an agreement that they could do the chipping and store the chips on the adjacent property that's uphill behind JJ Boomers to the north, that's above the floodplain elevation, and would be also buffered from almost all residential uses by the rest of the parcel. This is both why I am concerned about the level of noise described, and I'm surprised I hadn't heard that the work had started as we requested. But again, the material that's on site would have to be brought out by hand. We could not use machines to go in and drag it back out. But as the acting chairwoman stated, the use of a chainsaw would most likely be required in some areas for some of the larger brush.
So material is being dragged off and shipped.
I can't confirm that again. When I went by
But I
this,
mean, that's what was proposed.
that's what is proposed, yes, to be disposed of later off-site and to be stored off-site after it's mulched, and then for the mulch to be removed from site.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Moving on, our next item is a continuation from our last meeting, project location 279 Pawtucket Street. Proponent Michael Harkins.
Good evening. Good evening. My name's John Boardman from Hancock Associates in Marlborough, Mass., also in Chelmsford and Danvers. Here on behalf of Harkins Real Estate. My colleague Joe Pesnola was here at your last meeting presenting this project, and when he left there were a couple of laundry list items that the commission was requesting. In between that last meeting and this one, we revised the plan to address those concerns. That plan was submitted to your office, and I believe that's what you're unfolding in front of yourself right now. My understanding of those concerns and what the changes made were was that a sign was placed at the end of the roadway. The sign was directing the contractor not to store snow at the end of the roadway and block the end of the roadway and/or the catch basin, but to use the designated snow storage area so that that would be clear on site. In addition, there was some riprap armament added towards the end of the roadway in case stormwater was ever to run past the catch basin and over the curb, and that would prevent erosion, and I believe that was requested by the commission. We added some information about the distance to the river across the canal, and a detail has been added to the plans of a standard fieldstone and mortar retaining wall. So that information has all been added. In addition, in the interim, between meetings, DEP has issued their file number with no comments or concerns. And we did also receive a letter back from the Division of Fisheries and Wildlife in which they reviewed it under the Wetlands Protection Act and under MESA, and they determined that the project will not result in a take. And if I read it, it says, therefore, it is our opinion that the project meets the state-listed species performance standards for the issue of an order of conditions. So I believe that is also at least in your file in the office.
Thank you for adding those items to the plan. A question has arisen about the storage area. The limit of the flood zone appears to bisect that area somewhat.
Correct.
Could you explain how that storage area would work, being in that location?
The floodplain in that area is interesting, actually, and it's designated on the plan. It's a graphical floodplain with no elevation. And in actuality, the line goes perpendicular to the contours. So it really doesn't make that much sense as far as what actually would occur out there for a flooding situation. The floodwaters would obviously not go uphill. I think what the possibility is that it was historically changed and/or the original flood study was not terribly accurate in that area. If you look at the plan, we're at about an elevation of 46. I think the top of the canal bank is about 37. We are substantially above that canal area. The drainage system, I think your concern would be that, in the 100-year flood, it would be inundated possibly. That was if the 100-year flood in the canal itself would occur at the same time as the rainstorm. Sometimes those things run at different time frames. The flood may not be related to a rainstorm at all. It can be related to a snowmelt event. In addition, it would be reviewed by the city engineer as part of the planning process, and we would expect a condition on anything that you voted on that it meet her review and standards.
Has that review taken place with
Not
the
yet,
city
no.
engineer? I also had a concern after looking at the site again about the amount of fill that was going to be required to raise those house lots up. And it would seem that the retaining walls would be pretty important. I noticed you have a graphic here of the type of wall, but is it my understanding here that the soil is slightly below the top of the retaining wall on those house lots after the wall is constructed?
Yeah, typically it's not working well. Typically there would be a lip on the top of the wall, and then your building department requires that there be a railing or a fence on the top of the wall for walls that are over 30 inches, I believe. So there wouldn't be any safety issues there. They would have either a railing or a chain link fence across the top that would make sure that no one fell off.
Now, in the rear of these new lots, it appears that the neighbor has filled in quite a bit over the years. Will you be removing old fences that are buried and things like that, or is that not this property's possession?
If you're looking on this side of the project,
Yes.
I see a 4-foot chain link fence labeled on the plans that looks like it is on a butter's property. Obviously, the developer's going to want to have an attractive project. So if it is on our property, they will be cleaning it up and making it presentable. If it's a real eyesore and it's on the neighbor's property, I would suspect that the developer would approach them about cleaning it up themselves so that they have something at the end of the day that's saleable.
Okay. Are there any questions from the,
How high would you anticipate those retaining walls to be?
What's that?
How high would you anticipate the retaining walls will need to be?
I believe they vary from about 0 feet in height up to 6 feet in the max.
Okay.
And if you're out on the site now, there are a couple of retaining walls out there now that they use to make the grade.
Okay.
So it'll be similar to what's there as the units stagger down the hillside.
will they be reusing the stone where they remove the walls and use it on the other walls?
I suspect where it's feasible, yes. Obviously, that's very cost effective.
If there's no further questions, then I would entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
I make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second. Any discussion?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you. Do we want to consider an order for this project at this time? I think the additions to the plan have probably addressed most of our concerns. Anyone like to?
Make a motion to issue a standard order of conditions for this property.
Motion made, seconded by?
Second.
Discussion? Motion is made and seconded to issue a standard order of conditions on this project. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is a continuation of a notice of intent for a project at 211 Plain Street. This is a service driveway installation and related drainage on a 100-foot buffer zone to bordering vegetated wetlands. Is there anyone here for this project? This is the Target Plaza.
Good evening, members of the commission. I'm Stephen Glowacki. I'm with R.J. O'Connell and Associates, the civil engineers on the project.
Welcome.
Thank you.
I believe we were waiting for a DEP number.
That is correct.
And we also had we have actually an addition to an existing storm system, is that correct? Or you're tying into something that already exists out there?
That is correct, yes.
It included a lot of additional pavement and storm drains relocated, are they?
The drains weren't relocated. We added several catch basins and a curb to collect the water and tie into the drainage system to the north.
Now, did this drainage system have some kind of treatment on the catch basins?
The deep sumps and hoods, as standard when the project was, when the initial redevelopment was closed in 2010, we maintain that same standard, as well as a schedule of sweeping.
Now, will that be the same on the new catch basin?
That's the intent, yes.
Yes. Have you received any feedback from the DEP about your plan?
We did. There was a comment issued with the DEP, and I believe Mr. Thomas has reviewed that as well. And we had a discussion about this. I contacted the DEP. She had some concerns that this was considered a new development. I spoke to her about that, and she cited a certain example, which we do not have. And her example was a theoretical parcel of 5 acres with 2 acres of development. Considering additional development, a 3rd acre would need to be treated. Well, we don't have any additional pavement. Our net pavement, net impervious is less than it was in 2010, or prior to the development, rather, in 2010. So I believe she was misunderstood about the concept of this. And again, I had some discussions with Mr. Thomas, who I think shares my view as well.
Now, how did your net impervious become less?
In 2008, when the project was initially developed for a target, we had a decrease in impervious pavement of 8,000 plus square feet. I believe it was 8,400 square feet.
Due to landscaping? Or?
That's right, landscaping, islands, and so forth. The proposed service drive extension is approximately 60, I believe it was 6,600 square feet. I'm sorry, I apologize, I don't have the numbers written out. But the result is still a net increase of pervious area of 1,400 square feet. So there is, in fact, no additional impervious pavement added.
Very good. Does anyone on the commission have a question? Comments? Okay, then would someone like to make a motion to close the public hearing?
Motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I think this is probably an opportunity to issue a Lowell standard order as well. Would someone like to make that motion? Or you can add a special condition if you would like.
I move to issue a standard order of condition.
Second.
Second, discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much. Have a good evening.
Next, we have three certificates of, certificates of compliance in the next order on our agenda, but there's a third one for the same project that's further down on the list. I'd entertain a motion to take that order 206-345 out of order on the agenda in order to discuss all three certificates of compliances together, since it's the same project, but certificates issued at different times. Would someone make that motion?
I'll move to take the DEP file number 206-345 out of order along with 206-176.
Seconded by?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so our next order of business are these three requests for a certificate of compliance on the property located at 575-595 Pawtucket Boulevard. This is what's called the Saab Building. At least one of these certificates is quite old, and perhaps two of them are quite old. Mr. Gill is here to explain it.
Yes, Louise, if I'm able to. Just for the record, my name is Robert Gill, a registered professional engineer and land surveyor. And with me this evening also is Attorney Brad Pacheco, representing the estate of Louis Saab. I had attended a meeting 2 weeks ago, and I had submitted a request for a certificate of compliance, and Mr. Thomas at the time had pulled out, and we didn't realize at the time, but there were three certificate of compliance for the same property. And Brad had put in as 575. At one time, it was called 575, but it's actually 595 Pawtucket Boulevard. And I reviewed each of the prior orders of condition, and at this time, I submitted an as-built plan, which I believe conforms to the initial plans that were submitted. There were two different parties involved, and not one of the certificate of compliances were issued for any one of the projects, and it's all for the same site. I think Louisa and some of the board members were able to have a site visit the other day. I was not able to attend, but maybe Louisa could fill us in as any thoughts that the board may have had at that time.
I wasn't on the official site walk, but I was out there today. I'll say what I saw, and perhaps people who were in the official walk will add to it. It appears there's been no new work there for many, many years,
Right.
probably. But my recollection is that the depression to the, well, I guess it's the east side of the project was actually intended to be a retention basin, which it isn't described as such on your as-built plan. That depression has been filled up with debris of mostly landscaping debris, maybe fell naturally or maybe was put there by someone. And small trees have grown up. I'm not so concerned about the small trees, but I think that needs a good cleaning out to perhaps try to restore it to whatever function it had originally.
I would check the contours, and the contours are correct, but there's debris through the years. It's been uninhabited for quite a few years now. So, I think Mr. Pacheco would gladly have his people clean that out.
Excuse me?
That's not an issue, we'll have that cleaned out.
Yeah. Perhaps someone who was on the official walk could describe, I understand you found a drain or something out there.
Yeah, we took a look at, there's that overflow drain sort of near the concrete pad with the transformer.
Excuse
On
me,
the-
I didn't,
Toward the southerly end of the, I guess is, of the area that's intended to collect water, pretty
Yes.
close to the building itself. There's an overflow drain near that pad.
yes.
And the
correct.
intent of that is for the water then to flow out to the catch basin in the southwest corner and then into the public system, is that correct, or?
No, I
or the
believe
other
it was an
direction.
overflow from the parking lot to flow into the depression area.
Okay, so if I'm looking at the elevations correct, then that wouldn't flow the right direction. Or I guess I'd just be, if the intent is to flow out of the basin into that
Yeah,
low
if
spot.
it reached a certain point, right.
Right,
There's the 94, it goes back in there, but it's like an overflow protection. If it got
Okay.
up to that point, Nathan, then it would flow into the drainage and out.
okay, I mean, and do we have
That's the
any,
way it was designed.
I'd be curious in seeing some proof that it functions, if it'd be possible to put some water in there and make sure there's,
Yeah, there's a drain line that connects from there out to the catch basin out on the front.
right, I'm just concerned that since it looked, I didn't see any sign of flow around that, where the pipe comes out by the pad, I'm wondering whether it's actually functioning.
I can't imagine it not functioning. If
Well,
it's just,
If the pipe got crushed back during construction or something,
well, they could have it's Schedule 40 pipe that's been put in there. I can't imagine it being crushed.
and that may be, but with no sign of water flowing, it's hard to know if it's actually functioning.
Yeah, the water hasn't got that high in there for a long time,
Right.
so.
So if it would be feasible, I'd be interested in just putting, I don't know, 100 gallons of water through it to see if it ends up where it should.
Was that pipe sort of overgrown also as
It wasn't overgrown, it had leaves in it, and it hadn't been disturbed much lately, certainly, so. I don't know, and there was nothing to prevent leaves from getting in there and other debris. So, Hopefully it is working,
perhaps in the cleanup, we could just inspect that end of the pipe
just-
at least and
Yeah.
Inspect that end and, if.
perhaps put some
we
kind
get
of
a
screening
fire hose
over
or
it?
something and-
Would you recommend screening to keep leaves and debris out of that pipe?
Yeah, in current conditions, what we do is we put a cover over those, but at that time, the order was that many years ago that they don't do that, but they have like a rake cover a grate that goes over that. So that could be something that they could add when they clean it up and clean that end of the outlet out.
Would that be similar to like a trash rack?
Yes, exactly, Robert, yes. It wasn't part of the initial order, but it certainly would be. Well, that was a long time. Yeah, right, it certainly would be something that could be done now, which, is almost standard procedure now.
But yesterday, it was pretty heavily overgrown, and I think it's cast iron pipe.
At that, there it is, yes, yeah.
And it looked like it hadn't been disturbed, but
As Nathan said, there's a lot of leaves around it and so forth.
lots of,
Yeah,
well, I mean, it's in an area that catches everything.
right.
Is catch basin 100, 101, and 102 connected?
Yes, yeah. Yeah, there's culverts that go between the 12-inch culverts.
And that whole system is connected to the city?
Correct, yes.
So there is an outlet into the city?
Oh, absolutely, yep, yep. And at that time, it was designed at engineering standards to,
I think it'd be appropriate to clean up that outlet or that
I
inlet
think that's a good suggestion, yes, yep,
with the current trash rack over the open.
excellent. Yeah, I'm sure we wouldn't have no problem with that.
Are there any other concerns on this project or suggestions?
Yeah.
It would seem that this project has been ready for a certificate of compliance for a number of years.
Louisa, Brad just mentioned to me that if there's some way we could get a vote on that with the improvements that you just asked for. They're under an agreement deadline with the parties, and
I was just going to
issue
suggest
tonight
that
would be excellent.
if we vote on the certificate tonight, Mr. Thomas could hold it for you until the cleanup has occurred and
That would be wonderful.
go out and check it out. I would be
Wonderful.
comfortable with that because there's very little work that needs to be done out there. It's just actually landscaping. And
Correct.
so the grate and the cleanup of the
Absolutely,
of
that
the
would be terrific.
depression.
We'll have it done by Friday, I would anticipate.
Yeah.
Greg,
I believe-
in addition, you know, that swale could stand a little bit of thinning.
Yes,
There's a
absolutely.
lot of thicket in there, just leave the,
Taking some of the sturge away, Robert.
right,
yes.
it is, yeah. So if you clean that out somewhat and open that up, if there is any runoff from the parking lots, it's gonna be able to get to that open pipe.
Right, we'll make sure, Nathan, that's open, and we can check that area when we open it up.
'Cause I got stickers all over my sweater yesterday when I was walking
I
through
didn't get
there.
in that far, but I got some too.
Okay, so we appear to be ready for someone to suggest that we issue a certificate of compliance on these three orders. Numbers 176, 151, and 345. I don't think we need to take them separately.
Make a motion to order a certificate of compliance on these three parcels and include the cleanup work that has been discussed.
And the grate.
And the grate.
Second on that motion?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, good seeing you.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Good night.
Sorry, this is a typical question. Who was the second for that motion? Okay, thank you.
Next on our agenda is request for determination of applicability, Colby Bruce, 16 Brookside Street. Driveway paving in the 100-foot buffer zone to Flaggy Meadow Brook. Just wait 1 minute while we get our plans exchanged. Do we have a distance to the brook from your proposed work?
The closest distance is 35 feet.
35 feet?
Yeah.
Could you identify yourself, please?
Colby Bruce, I'm the homeowner at 16 Brookside Street.
Thank you. Flaggy Meadow Brook at this point has a wall on the side next to your property, is that correct?
That is correct.
And where would the drainage from this proposed driveway, where does it drain? Does it drain to the brook or to the street?
No, it drains back to the street, but at the end of the street is a catch basin that just goes straight to the brook, so eventually it's going to be drained to the street. I mean, to the brook, I'm sorry.
But it goes along pavement rather than overland
That is
to the,
correct.
to the wall.
Yes.
Now, you're adding asphalt to a driveway that's now gravel, is that correct?
That is correct, yep.
And you're also expanding the driveway to both sides of the house?
Yes. There'll be 3 spaces total.
Have you got a, a company that's going to be doing this work yet?
Yes.
Removing 1 inch of gravel and bringing in 3 inches of new gravel. Now, on top of that, I'm assuming there's about 3 inches of pavement.
There's actually 4 inches, yes.
So that would be raising the entire driveway up.
Keep it sloped back towards the street, yes.
And that driveway will still slope towards the street? Is
Yeah,
that-
it'll be probably graded back, say, 3 inches of gravel at the end of it and graded back to 1 inch towards the front of new gravel.
1 inch of the street?
Yes.
Mhm.
To keep it all graded back level towards the street, to keep the water running towards the street, not towards the brook.
And will there be some kind of a berm around it, or it's just gonna?
Yeah, from each ends of the driveway, coming down the street, there'll be a small berm between the 2 properties, and then the driveway will be sloped back, and then there'll be a berm between the 2 driveways, and then a berm, which is already there, all the way down the length of the property to the catch basin.
Okay. Does anybody on the commission have a question on this project? Yes.
Do you have a figure for how much, or how many square feet of pavement you're gonna be putting in altogether? I can't really tell, like, how big the driveway is.
I don't. I don't know if the printout, if it was listed, the dimensions. I don't have the dimensions on me.
It just says that it's 3 feet off.
I'm pretty sure the single side is 17 by 40. I think the 2 spaces to the opposite side of the house by the other retaining wall, I think that's like a 24 by 30 in that area. It's not,
So
huge.
it's a double wide driveway on one side and a single on the other?
That is correct. A slightly larger single, because it stores a larger truck, so it's, not a small space. It's a bigger space for a larger utility truck.
More questions? Where the drainage is heading toward the street, I don't really have a concern about erosion to the wall or disturbance of the brook on your property. There is a lot of pavement in the street that goes into that catch basin as well, so I don't think you're adding a lot in that respect, a lot of water in that respect. I would think that this could probably be a -3.
Is any of this officially floodplain, or?
I don't believe so. I believe I'm just over the floodplain.
No, I double-checked that. This is because of the retaining wall, actually. It's quite high where Mr. Bruce lives. His entire property is outside of the floodplain.
Someone like to make a motion?
I'll offer a motion to make a for the commission to make a -3 determination with regard to the application for the determination of applicability.
Okay, a motion to issue a -3 on this. Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. What this means is that it is applicable to our rules and regulations, but it won't cause any particular damage to the resource out there. So you'll be receiving something in the mail shortly. How long does that take to issue?
Typically, the determinations of applicability are actually fairly easy to issue, and so I could get that completed tomorrow. So as soon as you have that, if were you to pick it up, then you're ready to go as soon as you have it.
Excellent. See you tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you. Next on our agenda, we have a request for a certificate of compliance from Town and Country Nursing Center, DEP number 206623. The project location is 259 Baldwin Street. Is there anyone here for this project? This project goes back a year or so. It included an addition to the building and a few changes to an outdoor patio. The resource is a brook to the rear of the property. Which is, well, it's Black Brook, but it's pretty far from the proposed work. The work has been completed, and I saw no impacts at all. It seems to have been completed according to the plan, and I saw no impacts at all on the resource, except perhaps some cupolas which were stored close by the wetland boundary. I'm assuming that those may be going back on the building when work is completed. Does anyone have any comments to make on this project? I didn't see any disturbed areas. Either they were never disturbed or they're completely revegetated. The work basically was inside a paved parking area, as far as I could see. Does anyone have a motion to make on this request?
I'll move to issue a certificate of compliance for this project.
Motion to issue a certificate of compliance. Do we have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Moore. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Motion passes. Next on our agenda, we have request for certificate of compliance, 981 Varnum Avenue, the Duville Senior Care. This project is not the major project out there, but it included building of a maintenance shed, a drainage swale, and removal of some pavement. We have representatives here. Would you like to say what you've done out there?
Sure.
Identify yourself, please.
Yep, I am Matt Kittner. I am the Director of Building Projects over at Duville. We built a maintenance garage last year, and we came before, the board here and did a certificate of application, and we built the project almost 100% according to plan. We did, as we pointed out in our letter, add a little bit more gravel area than we had initially thought we would add. And that was simply because, like anything you build, it's never big enough when you build it. And we needed a little more area for some storage of some equipment. And it's basically like a plow in the summertime and stuff. So we fenced in the back of the area. And initially we were going to do half gravel. We decided to do all gravel. And we added a couple of access gravel areas. But as John points out, there was no negative impact on the resource as a result of this. Yep, it's just right in the back here. And there's a little access right here and an access this way as well.
It says metal maintenance building.
Oh, I'm sorry, is that what you wanted to know where? Yeah, it's this right here.
Yeah, no, I was just curious which gravel was the additional.
Yeah, I believe in the original plan, we were doing half of this area and we extended it to a full width of the building. And we put a fence around it as well.
Now, you had proposed a swale, a sort of a drainage swale on your original site plan. Was that constructed as proposed?
Yeah, yep, yeah, all of the water, I should say the grading, grades into the back, and then the natural grade, from the hill, comes down into it. So the water kind of goes around the back of that gravel area, but it's all grassed area. It's not like a swale with stone or anything. It's just a grass swale. And that wraps around the back of this so the water can naturally flow.
There appears to be a small shed that isn't shown on the plan that's
Yes.
in that vicinity.
Yeah, that was actually put there by the maintenance department. I wasn't aware. Those sheds were originally right here, and they moved them to the back, trying to improve the area. That just actually happened this week. So that's why they're not shown on the plan here. It was kind of a surprise as well for me.
Now, is that a permanent location?
Well, they would like to keep them there, but if that's a problem, I can certainly have them moved anywhere. They're portable sheds. They're not anything permanent. They're not on foundations. They're just kind of sitting.
I was just wondering what effect that would have on the swale. It seems to be straddling it somewhat.
Okay, it can be moved away from the swale. That's not an issue. I mean, the swale, I didn't even see where this shed was. I noticed the larger shed is on the asphalt behind that shed there. As far as I know, they were going to leave the smaller shed on the gravel area. That's what I was told, and so it should, because the swale actually is behind the gravel area. It, wraps around the back of the gravel.
So perhaps moving it over 10 feet or so would do
Yeah,
it?
that's not a problem at all.
Now, we spoke today at the site about a spot of erosion coming off of your parking lot next to the metal maintenance building, the northeast corner of that paved area.
Yep, right around there.
Everything seems to slope down to that one corner, and apparently there's quite a flow there that's caused erosion of the soil, and the grass has been washed away there. We need some kind of a solution for that
Yep.
problem right
Yep,
there.
and you had recommended, some stone in that area would be acceptable? A stone?
Well,
kind of a-
I'm wondering what size stone with it seems to be quite a force of water has come through there to erode down probably 3 or 4 inches or more.
Yep, we did actually have quite a bit of rain right after we had done the hydro seed, and we do have a lot of fine sand. So, but, I mean, we could probably put trap rock, I guess, would be probably the heaviest stone, you know, a 4-inch stone, something like that.
Bigger than that, just see how it handles it.
Yeah, we could try, you know, a 4-inch stone, maybe like a 2-foot wide. It wasn't an overly large area. It was a smaller area of swale
Right,
washout.
it looks like you could make a sort of a little channel right there,
Yeah.
actually, with,
Yeah. That's not a problem.
Right.
We have a lot of construction going on, so this stuff is easy to get done on the property.
you had a recommendation, Mr. Thomas, did you, on that issue?
I actually think that my recommendation was along the lines of what Mr. Kittner is proposing, a larger, coarser grain material. I hadn't heard of the type of stone you discussed, but, you know, 3 or 4 inch stone,
Yeah.
approximately a 2-foot wide area on the edge. Unfortunately, it's sort of in the corner, so you might have to wrap it around to a certain degree, but just enough that would reduce the velocity and be almost, you know, a very small and simple settling area would meet the demands. And as you said, because of the fine grain material you have out there, there is considerable siltation along your erosion controls in the rear of the property.
Yep.
Next to your old shed, which is closest to the wetland boundary, there was some cleanup that needed to be
Yep.
done. I thought there were limbs. Of course, everyone's got a million
Yeah.
limbs this week,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
There were
Exactly.
some limbs in there that should be disposed of somewhere other than within the wetland boundary. Other than that, did anyone else have any comments on this particular project? How soon do you think the
I can address all that
erosion
stuff.
can be addressed?
That can be all done, you know, this week coming, you know, by the end of next week, everything can be done. That's not a big deal.
You're not in any hurry. I mean, if we continue this until that work were done,
No,
yeah,
no.
that wouldn't,
Yeah, I just want to, you know,
Impact
clean
anything.
up, you know, the loose ends, because
Right,
I
right.
remember I came back to you guys before I did this project. We had an outstanding order that went back quite a
Right,
few years.
right.
You know, and like I spoke to you today, oftentimes, you know, these projects, you know, the silt fence, you know, stays there for years, and it's just a, you know, it's a mess, so I want to get it cleaned up, you know, and have it, you know, have the area kind of, you know,
So-
naturally restored, so.
rather than have you having to rush through this in order to comply with some condition that we put on it tonight, I think it would be better to probably to continue this
Okay.
and then see what you can do out there, perhaps wait for another rainstorm and see
Yep.
what happens.
No problem.
And we can put this on the agenda for our next meeting,
Okay,
and you probably wouldn't have to appear yourself.
Okay.
But if you could give Mr. Thomas a call when you feel you've got that work done, then
Sure.
we can go out and take a look.
fabulous. Thank you.
Okay, I would then entertain a motion to continue this particular request.
I'll make a motion to continue.
Seconded by,
Second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That actually, since we rearranged some items on the agenda, that actually brings us to the end of our regular agenda. We have no minutes to consider, but we do have something under other business. Craig?
Yes, I provided a few different pieces of correspondence in a series with representatives from National Grid regarding work that's occurred in Pawtucketville along one of the electricity rights of way. As came up on the previous hearing, and as has been the case in this area over the last week, everyone's been picking up from the storm, and especially the utility crews trying to restore power. As a part of that, and really for this reason, regular maintenance and in-kind replacement of utility and especially electrical poles and equipment is exempt from state regulation and local ordinance. Now, to accomplish some of the required repairs in the area that runs approximately parallel to Acropolis Road in Pawtuckettville, it starts at the junction of Gumpus Road and Acropolis Road and runs westerly. There were National Grid required access with ATVs to bring some heavier equipment in. As a part of that, there was disturbance of some bordering vegetated wetland in that area. It's part of a large wetland system. Again, it drains into one portion Clay Pit Brook and another into Flaggy Meadow Brook and ultimately into the Merrimack. This is also the large wetland area to the north and west of the Wang School off of West Meadow Road. Now, I walked the site the long right-of-way with a representative from National Grid, and I believe the Commissioner Varna may have gone out there as well today. There are clear indications of 3 separate wetland areas that were disturbed. The disturbance was relatively minor in nature, but significant enough to require some restoration. Their proposed relatively simple and straightforward restoration, again, as an exempt activity, they could really try and do the minimum possible work, but they have proposed a little bit more work that is a little bit more appropriate, in my opinion, than the minimum requirement. They've discussed sending out a work crew on foot, not on ATVs with rakes to smooth out the area and bring it back to the pre-existing grade. It's fairly well covered with low-lying brush, so the smoothing it out would achieve the same effect, more or less, as the same conditions as existed prior to the disturbance. There were 2 areas of moving water. As I indicated, that was a priority to maintain the free flow and passage of the water in those areas. They indicated that they would try and be sensitive to maintaining the stream channels in their restoration work, and that it should occur in the next week or so. I didn't know if there were any questions or Commissioner Varna wanted to add anything from her walk of the site.
Yeah, I did walk out there today, and it was quite rough walking, mostly juniper growing. I would have liked to have seen the vehicle that was able to drive in there. It must have been a tank or something. There are quite a few low areas that have water in them, and I would think that just smoothing out the ruts that were left by the vehicle would be all that was needed. It is a sensitive area because there is quite a large swamp that backs up to a couple of subdivisions of homes, and I think probably handwork and just getting in there and smoothing things out is all that's needed. Do we need to make any kind of motion on that?
I don't believe so, but you could make a motion to place on file the correspondence we've received, or can request that I continue to pass along anything I receive. We could also just state that without a motion. It's up to the desire of the commission.
Yeah, I think we should keep that material on file. It was actually sent to us by email, I believe. So if Mr. Thomas will keep a copy on file, that should do it. Are there any other old and new business items?
I have
Yes.
2 additional notifications from National Grid I just received today. These are not related to storm cleanup, but I think continued routine and regular maintenance on some of their electrical transmission lines. I didn't have a chance to see what one of them was. The second was a vegetation management plan, which is something we've seen with the railroads. The railroads are not totally exempt and thus have come before us with requests for determination of applicability. I know there's been requests for more information. I can see what I can find from National Grid, but I will provide what I received to the commission for consideration for the next meeting.
Thank you. I think that's a yearly occurrence as far as the railroad goes, is it not?
With the railroads, I think it's the life of the determination of applicability, so it's a 3-year window. I'm not sure, this is the first of this type of notification I've received from other public and semi-public utilities.
Okay, if there are any other items to be brought up, then I think we can have a motion to adjourn. We have a few things to sign, but, so don't leave.
Make a motion to adjourn?
Seconded by,
Second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.